Okay. The most important thing in a light is shadow. In this lesson, we want to talk about the shadows. First, we create a omni light here. And as you can see, it's important in the center of the software. We bring it here to create a shadow. And as you can see, we have two things here. In a viewport or when you click a render. As you can see, when you click a render, we have nothing here. We have the two modes of render. Render in this render view or render in picture viewer. The final render is a picture viewer. In most cases, we use that. So for seeing the shadows in the scene, you have to go to option and turn on the shadows. And as you can see, in a viewport, you can see the shadow. But where is the shadow? The second thing that you have to mention is that you have to turn the shadow on in the lights. In this lesson, we want to focus on the shadow. I will be explaining the color and other things in general tab in the next lesson, but we want to focus the shadow here. In previous lesson, we talked about the all kind of the type of the light, but here we want to focus on the shadow and the specific tab in the software called shadow here that you can define the shadow. In the general tab, you can directly choose which shadow do you want. Shadow map soft. As you can see, the shadow will be appear here. It's as you can see, you can move the lights in any way, in any direction that you want. And now you can see the shadow. So don't forget to turn the shadow here on. This is a soft shadow. This is an hard shadow. And as you can see, look at the edges. This is the difference between hard and soft. But it is in viewport. Don't forget to render it. Another shadow is area that you cannot see any difference because you have to render it. First, we render the soft shadow. We render it in a picture viewer to compare it. In the picture viewer, yeah, this is our render. Then change it to the hard, render in picture viewer. And as you can see, you can difference between soft and hard edges. These are all about anti-aliasing and some other setting that I will explain it. Another shadow that you can change it. It's the best and accurate shadow. The real life, it's smooth and it is take too time to render. And as you can see, you can difference between soft, hard, area. That we can work on it. Don't worry. In any shadow that you can directly select it from here. So now we're going to this tab. If you select the shadow from the general tab, it's automatically selected here. And we have a lots of setting for here. None. Soft shadow, we have lots of setting here. Hard shadow and area. And as you can see, those four setting are the same in all shadows. Let's talk about the first problem of the soft shadow. I'm going to the soft shadow, hard. In a soft shadow, for example, I insert, focus on here. We are in a soft, render it. In a soft, oh yeah, you can see it here. As you can see, you can feeling the object is in air, as you can see, but it is the object is exactly as you can see, it's intersect the floor. But the main problem of the soft shadow is that you can feeling that object, as you can see, it's an air. That we can fix it. It's in settings. But if you go to the light and make it hard and then render, now as you can see, everything is correct. So this is the first problem of the soft shadow. Be careful about that. So we are going to the soft and let's talk about the settings. The first thing that is here, that's the common in all of the shadows, are the density. You can change the density of the color. First, render it. You can select and delete all of them. I will be explaining the picture viewer in the next lesson. It's very interesting when we want to talk about the render. And we render first in the picture viewer, then change the density, for example, to the lower number. As we can see in a viewport, you can see the effects. It changed the strength and density of your shadow. We have more light shadow now. So you can change density. You right click here to reset it, or right click and reset default or reset all. Here you can change the color of your shadow. Nice. It's very simple and easy. That I will be explaining all of these color pickers in when we want to explain the material. Uh, another interesting thing here is transparency. It's active. Um, for example, this uh, flower here, we have a material here. You can double click on this material or go into the material editor. As you can see, it's highlight, double click in a material editor. And I want to add the transparency to it. As you can see, it's transparent. In its settings, we change the strength of transparency in this number. Okay. Now it's transparency. It means light path through that. Little more. Yeah. And let's render it now. The transparency check on. It means it's calculated transparency. If you render, and as you can see, we have a different shadow because we have a lighter shadow because the light is passing through the object. It means it's calculated transparency. But if you don't want, you can untick that and it does not calculate the transparency. And as you can see, we have a more dense shadow. It means it does not calculate its transparency and the light doesn't pass in through that. So if you want to calculate the light, calculate the transparency objects. Nice. Now we are going to material and turn off. I will be explaining the material editor in a next category of the software tutorials. I will be explaining all of its settings one by one. Okay. Another thing here is a clipping influence. This sometimes it's a turn off because we need to go into other kind of the lights. It's turn on in a spotlight. Okay, this is an our spotlight. Now turn the angle on. Okay, and now if you go into the light and the shadow, it's turned on. Clipping influence. It means I will be explaining it next lesson in the details. When you turn on the near clip and the far clip of the lights, it means it's clipping the area of the lights. If you tick that, it calculates the clipping in shadow. That I don't like to I don't prefer it. But if you have a bigger scene, if you learn what is clipping here, it's clip the lights. As you can see, it's clipping the area of the light. Nice. As you can see, we haven't any light anymore because it's clipped. Now we are here, and as you can see, we have light from this distance to this distance. As you can see, and it's also clipped the shadows. It is very nice when we have a very big scene. I will explain it more. So you can turn it on if you want. Go into the general and turn it to the Omni. And you can come in here and zero its rotation and bring it there to explain it more. Go into the shadow, and interesting thing here is the shadow map. Hit render. As you can see, this is our render in this shadow map. The shadow map changing the quality of the lights. Another render to compare it. Yeah, as you can see, this is our shadow map with this number, shadow map in a higher number. If you render it, and as you can see, you can compare. Yeah, this is a more high quality of light. And if you increase the number of the um, shadow map, and as you can see, we use lots of memory. If you go into the higher number, as you can see, we have lots of usage memory, and be careful about that. Your file gonna to be a lots of heavy. So this this is nice for me, or default number. If you increase the number of the shadow maps, your soft shadows go into the hard shadow. You can change the resolution in X and Y. Why is this in the X number? Because it's omni light. It's in the one direction. But if you go into the general and change it to the spotlight, the shadow, now the resolution of the X and Y is, you can separately change them. Be careful about the memory usage. And this is a sample radius. You can change the sample radius booster. The sample radius is directly talk about the quality of or anti-aliasing of your shadows. This, if I render it there, and as you can see, we have a shadow. Imagine that this is a shadow that are made from some circles. Okay, the circles are in its place, and if you give a, for example, a higher number, let's default it and render it here more. Okay, and you can see it. We have a soft. But if you increase the number of the radius of that samples, what happened? Compare it. And as you can see, we have more softer. Because, for example, you imagine we have a sample exactly here. It's stay in its position, but it's increase its radius. You increase its radius. So we have more softer. Or make it 1 and render it again. Now, as you can see, it's a sample of default, and this is on 5, this is on 1. We have more facets and crispy edges. So this is about the sample radius. You can control the edge of your shadow with here. Or if you want to create a booster, you can allow higher in number to this number here. But we reached the most important thing on bias, absolute bias. This absolute bias, if you activate it, it's don't change it because it is fixing the old problem in old version of the Cinema 40. It's they put it here for a lower version of the Cinema 40 that this solved that problem because the shadow in the old version has a major problem that the shadow distance was depend on the distance between the fedora and the object. It was very annoying problem in the old version of Cinema 40, but it's solved and it's there for the old version. Important thing here is the bias absolute. It means rel is mean relative. The distance between the shadow and the object was relative to the source and the object. It was very bad and annoying. But it's solved and it's not important here. But if you turn it off, you have to change the relative distance between the object and the shadow. Not good. But as I said before, this is an soft light, and if you render it, and as we can see, we have that problem because this is the all about the absolute bias here. So we change this number to the lower number and render it again. As you can see, we have a problem. Higher number. With changing that number, you can solve it for fixing that problem. A higher number, 1 millimeter. As you can see, this is all about absolute distance between the shadow and the object. And you can see the problem here. Yeah. The shadows are here, are changing in a soft. Can change the number. Yeah, you can see it in a. Okay, let's compare it. Default number. Rendering picture viewer. So it's better to see here. Make it from 5, smaller number, to higher number. Now just remember, this solving this issue that you feel the object is above the ground, but it's intersect that. 5. D. As you can see, you can compare it. And higher number. But for a number, you have to be careful about that. Yeah. It's omni-light, soft shadow. Yeah. So it's that about that, all about that. Can change the number. The default number is this. But we have that issues for soft. This is all about distance. If the distance from the source, and it's also important. And as you can see, if you render, we have that issues. As you can see, if you change the distance, okay, as you can see, it's very relative to the distance your camera from the object. If you're going so close, you can see the problem very bad. You can change this absolute distance to the lower number. I hope it's fixed. Yeah, it's just a little bit fixing that. Okay, this is a major problem of soft. That's with changing that, you can solve it or not. I don't know why. Okay, parallel beats is turned off because it is for infinite lights. You can go to the general, infinite light, and it's all about, this is an infinite light. It means if you go to the shadow, as you can see, we have a parallel width. It means because it is very infinite light, and if you imagine you have a very large scene, the infinite light creates for every object a shadow, but you don't see that scenes and you don't need them. And this width in this area in millimeter just creates its shadows, the object in this area. It means it's a limit for your shadow. And in this moments, you can render your scene faster because it does not create for all objects a shadow. It's a limitation for your creating an infinite light. The maximum, the Cine 40 does everything for you, and this number is nice. So, for example, you have a city and it's an infinite light. Because if you have an other omni or a spotlight, we have a fall off for that. Okay, but infinite light it does not have any fall off. For example, in a real world, we have 100% of strength of light. We are going to the distance, and light is dying. It's coming to die. It's turning down, and but in infinite light, we have infinite power in every area of the scene, and it's very time consuming for render. Nice. Going back to the Omni and change its rotation to the 0. As you can see, the rotation in the Omni light is not important. Let's talk about outline shadow. And as you can see, if you render it, it's just render the outline of your shadows. It's an effect that you want to use it. This high quality, if you turn it on, I think it is for some other spot or infinity. As you can see, it's turning from here to here. It's a shadow. The high quality is simple. If you use in Omni Light, if you use a higher number of the sample radius, you can turn it on to make it better quality. It's very simple. But I don't know why is this, but we have it. It's a shadow coin. Hmm. Let's bring a new scene for explain it. It's a strange, but it's there. Nice. And I want to create some circle here that you can see it better. Nice. We have our using in oops. Nice. And a filter. And we use a infinite raise spotlight. Oops. An infinite light to create a shadow for those. Turn it. As you can see, the directional infinite is here. The option, we turn the shadow on, and in the light, we have a soft light because it's there. And as you can see, we change it to create a longer, and the source light comes here. Nice. The location of it's not important because it's infinitely from here to here. Going to the light, make it here and create a coin. You can see it in a render viewer. And as you can see, it create a coin shadow from the light. If you turn it off, I'll render it from above. As you can see, because it's the infinite, all of its shadows are in this direction. But if you turn the shadow coin in this angle, oops, now you have this effect. From the distance of our source, we have a coin shape of the shadow. We have this effect that you can turn it on if you want, and if you want a soft coin, you can turn it on. You can turn it off. Okay. This is for infinite light, or as you can see in the hard, we don't have it. Okay. I usually don't like the soft light because as you can see, it has a lots of problem. Okay, let's talk about another lighting hard. And as you can see, it has not any settings because it's hard, and it hasn't any setting, and it hasn't any problem. As you can see, everything is nice and hard. So we have the various settings in the best shadow is the area that you have to use it. And as you can see, if you turn it to the area, we have a square at the light. It means you activate the area light for your light system, and it is time consuming to render, but it's more accurate and nice. And it has just 3 settings. You can create accuracy of that, minimum or maximum sample for that. I explain it with just a simple image here from the help. First, and as you can see, we have these 2 scenes, the minimum and the maximum, and the accuracy. Don't change the minimum sample. So the minimum sample, as you can see, we have a like a powder shadow here and noise. We have 100% accuracy here. Okay, accuracy is important, but the samples are more important because as you can see, we have 100% accuracy. We have a lower number, but we have more quality because the maximum sample is most important here. Okay, it means you give the software more sample to create a more nice and accurate shadow. So the maximum, don't change the minimum, it's nice. The maximum sample, it means the more sample you can give to your shadow to calculate. Another example is here. As you can see, we have the maximum sample in a 100% number and a lower number in the maximum sample. And the accuracy. You can change the difference between. For example, from here, in every 3 images, we have 100 maximum sample and minimum sample is constant. And we change the accuracy here. As you can see, we change the accuracy, 100, more, but we have that noise. So you learn here, accuracy is nice. It's bringing the time render up, but it does not affect very much because the maximum sample is more important. But in this scene, as you can see, we have a minimum sample and accuracy. In this number is nice. Change this number. 75 is nice. But you change the maximum sample. It's going to the softer and nice shadow, but look at the render time. Compare it. Oh, we have very high number if you change the maximum samples. It means you give the lots of sample to render and it takes 2 time to render. But you learn here the most important setting to make the higher quality your shadow is maximum sample. So this is our shadow tab. Going to the next lesson for other tab. Hello my friends, to continue these tutorials on YouTube, subscribe us, like us, and hit the bell icon. And now you will be alerted about all of the amazing videos that we release.